Sollecito have both been acquitted of the murder of the British student Meredith Kercher.
And hundreds of people have gathered in the streets outside the court in the city of Perugia ahead of the verdict.
And coming up in a moment in World Business Report, in Luxembourg, finance ministers from the 17 countries that use the euro talk late into the night about their next step.
More now on the freeing on appeal of Amanda Knox and her former boyfriend Raffaele Sollecito. The BBC's Luisa Baldini looks back at a case that has gripped the media in the United States and in Europe.
A picture was painted of Amanda Knox as having the face of an angel, but the persona of a she-devil. The reality is that Amanda was not capable of murder, but she was young, naive and misconstrued from the moment investigators set eyes on her. It's true, her much photographed face has eclipsed that of her murdered flatmate, the British student Meredith Kercher, who was 21 when she came to Perugia in 2007. Meredith, who once appeared in this pop video, had been in Italy for just 2 months when she was sexually assaulted and stabbed in her own bedroom. Investigators and prosecutors came up with a theory that Amanda and her then boyfriend Raffaele Sollecito forced Meredith into a sex game, along with a third man, Rudy Guede, whose DNA was all over the crime scene and who has since been convicted of the murder.
Much of what was alleged to have happened in the apartment that Amanda shared here with Meredith is based purely on supposition. None of Amanda's DNA was found in Meredith's bedroom, and an independent review of the analysis allowed at the appeal dismissed many of the original findings because of contamination and bad practice in how the evidence was collected.
They went into the house not looking for evidence, but they were looking for evidence that tied Amanda and Raffaele specifically. And anything that they found that clearly shows she wasn't involved, they just twisted it to make it sound like she was involved.
When Amanda and Raffaele were seen kissing within hours of Meredith's body being found, it was deemed inappropriate. Suddenly, they were the focus of attention and were arrested 4 days after the murder.
Arriving in the police office, I didn't expect to be interrogated at all.
Over a year after they were first imprisoned, Knox and Sollecito stood trial. They said they had never been at the apartment the night of the murder. They were at his place watching a video and smoking marijuana. Prosecutors claim Meredith's bra clasp found at the scene had Raffaele's DNA on it. But independent analysis in the appeal revealed it hadn't been bagged until 46 days after the murder and had been contaminated. The analysis also found there was too little DNA on the blade of a kitchen knife belonging to Raffaele, the supposed murder weapon, to be able to attribute it to Meredith Kercher, as the prosecution had claimed.
Meredith Kercher was killed by one man, Rudy Herman Guede. He was a known burglar. She surprised him in the house, and he took her life and sexually assaulted her.
Are you taking movies right now? No.
Finally exonerated, Amanda Knox will soon be able to return to normality, though after the ordeal of the last 4 years, it will be a different sort of normal. Luisa Baldini, BBC News, Perugia.
Well, let's just take you to these pictures just come in from Perugia. This is the cars leaving Capane prison. Now, Amanda Knox is in the second of these cars to come through. She is heading, of course, for the airport. As we were saying just now, the expectation is that she is leaving the country as fast as she can, even though the prosecution has made it very clear it is going to the Italian Supreme Court, seeking to have this appeal verdict quashed. As I say, whether Amanda Knox will come back to Italy, whatever the result of that appeal hearing is very much an open question. Those pictures just in from outside Capane prison in Perugia. We can go live to Perugia. Our correspondent Daniel Sandford is there. Daniel, we've been talking about Italian justice being on trial here. Effectively, these two judges, these 6 jurors, have said the Italian Supreme Court, no less, was wrong when it ruled that Rudy Guede acted with these 2 accomplices.
Yes, there was a number of things that came out in this case. One is that certainly the Supreme Court's
ruling that Rudy Guerre had killed with others is now obviously under some question. There could be others that weren't Amanda Knox and Raffaele Sollecito, but really what's under fire here is the way that the forensic work was handled, first of all by the police and the prosecutors, and then by the first court during the first trial, because it's not enough to go into a house, to walk around in suits with masks on and special forensic suits, and to gather evidence and then analyse it. It has to be done in a very, very particular way in order to meet the kind of standards that are met in places like Britain and America and some other parts of Europe. And the allegation in this case has always been that it was kind of false forensic evidence gathering. They kind of wandered around and looked like they were gathering evidence, but they weren't doing it properly. Well, obviously that's a story that's going to develop over the next few days and weeks, but that is really where a lot of the focus is going to be, and also whether or not the first court challenged that evidence sufficiently.
And Rudy Guerre, of course, the only man whose conviction still stands for this murder. By the way, we said earlier he'd been sentenced to 30 years in prison. That was reduced on appeal to 16. Daniel, is it likely that given the demolition of this part of the forensic evidence that he is likely to use this demolition to challenge his own conviction?
No, I don't believe so. I think the evidence against Rudy Guerre is much stronger than it was against Amanda Knox and Raffaele Sollecito. It's very, very difficult to conceive a scenario where Rudy Guerre was not in some way involved in this case, in this murder. There's so much kind of evidence pointing at some kind of involvement. I think the Supreme Court's reduction of the sentence was partly because of the fact he'd opted for a faster trial, a short trial, which obviously saved everyone a lot of time and effort, but also because at that time it wasn't clear absolutely who it was that had delivered the fatal blow to Meredith Kercher. Now, if you were to take the version that Amanda Knox and Raffaele Sollecito's lawyers have, well, they say, no, it was just Rudy Guerre, and then maybe he has got away with a sentence that is not appropriate. Or there may still be someone out there who is in some way involved in the murder.
Daniel, I know there was some questioning whether the very high-profile, very efficient media campaign waged by Amanda Knox's family might be counterproductive. And earlier, there was a very hostile reaction from those crowds in Perugia outside the court.
Yeah, there's two factors that come out of that. I mean, the hostile crowd relates to the fact that the way this case has ended up is that it's a black man, an immigrant, that has been found guilty of this murder, and there are some people who feel that the kind of wealthy white kids have walked free and the poor black man has not. Now, as we've been discussing, there were very strong problems with the evidence against Amanda Knox and Raffaele Sollecito, and not so much so with the evidence against Rudy Guerre. So that may be a slightly unfair allegation, but you know, there has been a very, very powerful PR campaign on behalf of Amanda Knox. The question is whether in any way that was necessary in order to win the legal case within the court. And really the damage that was done by the PR campaign in the end was never going to be in influencing the outcome of the court case, but of course it's done caused huge hurt to the family of the victim, Meredith Kercher, because they feel that everyone's been focusing on Amanda Knox as being the victim in this case, somebody who might have been the victim of a terrible miscarriage of justice, and yet their daughter, their sister, was really brutally killed. It wasn't a simple murder, it was a ghastly, slow murder. She bled to death after having had her throat cut many times. And they feel that somehow Amanda Knox has kind of become the victim, and they want people to remember it was their daughter, and that the most important thing for them is to know as much as possible the truth of what happened.
Understood. Daniel, thank you very much.
Forces loyal to the transitional government in Libya say that they expect to launch a final